Hey friends, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well. And just a few days ago, Champion Data told us what the brand new positions will be for the 2026 fantasy footy season. But on the Keeper platform, one of the buttons you can choose to make eligible for your side is to have Keeper specific allocations on. And that gives you a little higher volume of players movement during the year. It's rounds 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. That's when at the conclusion of those rounds, those positional gains can come in. But in addition to that, they always give us a bunch of new positions that we can have in Keeper to start the year. We've got a handful of new mids, couple new forwards that might just change the game, and then something that the real deep dynasty and keeper leagues, well, you might be pretty happy with it. Let's roll you through the ones that might not feel valuable at first, but I think what might just be underplayed a bit. I'll also give you some thoughts about why Keeper have chosen to add a secondary player to this guy. Now, before I run through all 13, don't forget on Keeper, one of the great initiatives on this platform isn't just the customization of how you set up your single season, your dynasty, or your keeper leagues. Not only is it, as I've mentioned, also the fact that you can choose to enable or disable any positional movements that you like, is that if you choose the keeper positions, you can get triple position players. So nobody here is getting TPP, but it doesn't mean because they've landed DPP here, they're ineligible for another game. Right, let's jump in. Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera is where we are going to start. Honestly, I was a little surprised when the Champion Data positions came out just a few days ago that he wasn't defender mid, but no, they listed him as a defender. I love that Keeper have added this to him. We don't have to wait into the season to get this flexibility on our list, because really we saw over the last 8 rounds moving into a pretty heavy centre square attendance role. And I think this is really smart of Keeper. It's not just a forecasting probable role. It's the reality of what he is now. He's a pure midfielder that plays across halfback at times to create and get into the game. He's not a defender. So I think I really like this move. In a similar vein is Port Adelaide's Miles Bergman. Miles did have his end of year interrupted with injury, but much like Nasiah, in the middle of the season, I think it was round 10, jumped into a midfield role, and pretty much from then until he got ruled out for the end of the year with injury is around about a 50% centre square attendance role, let alone when he did play in defence earlier in the year, he would push up high and be around the ground. One of the things that Keeper do value highly isn't just where you positionally start at a centre bounce or at a throw up in the middle of the ground that we've now got to refer to, but it's also where they're winning possessions and how they're impacting the game. So I like both of these two additions, arguably top line defenders in their own right. Now you've got that squad flexibility with those moves. Then you've got 3 other defenders that are now also defender mid. They being Dan Houston, started to play a lot more wing as the year went on. Maybe people realised I actually like this move again. Probably doesn't add too much value, but adds a little bit of flexibility. Ollie Hollins, yes, played a lot of defence last year, but as the year went on too, played a lot of wings, started to float back, not just came off the halfback line and pushing up. So I think those are reasonable moves. And then one I don't think a lot of people might have thought, and I'll be honest, the first time I saw the positions land from Keeper, I was like, really? And then the more I've kind of marinated on it, I've kind of not only got it, but I'm starting more and more to understand what and how Keeper are valuing positions and where players are getting the ball. The player I'm alluding to is a Luke Trainer. He's now a defender mid too. Yes, undoubtedly playing as that rebound and intercepting defender, of course, but was pushing up higher and higher and really creating that wall of play, stabilizing high half forward to wing territories where Richmond were trying to really close up the gate. Now, you could say, well, that's a defender playing that role. Oh, okay, I'll hear that. But I understand what they've done with this decision. Again, maybe a little bit of handing help for deep dynasty and keeper leagues. Probably not so much if you're doing a single season draft on keeper, but let's see. There's certainly some at the Tigerland that believe he could maybe one day even turn into a midfielder. Picking up midfield status while we're staying in this lane is a forward in Brian Myers. He started to get some centre square opportunities from sort of round 19 onwards, and he was already playing quite high, not just as a high half forward, but was getting involved in territory in that defensive area and creating an outlet to really be a transition player for Geelong through the midfield. If this role holds, not only is he going to still be someone that could be a genuine F1 for us in our draft leagues, but it probably should protect that scoring basement that at times we have seen when he was spending a lot of time inside forward 50, we'd get, the 90s and hundreds every now and then, but a lot of 50s and 60s. Those really disappeared last year with a higher role. And so I can understand why Keeper have added this. Let's talk about the two people that have been forward eligible that are now ruck forwards. And again, they've both been given for similar reasons, that being for Peter Wright and also for Hudson O'Keefe. The reason both these guys have got these opportunities, I think, is pretty comparable. Is they're pretty much ruck contests were over that 20% marker, which is a really critical junction point for the guys at keeper. But let's be honest, are you really picking them up because they're ruck getting that small amount of time? No. It just adds a margin of value. Again, Hudson O'Keefe, whether he's in and out of best 23, we've got the preseason to discuss. Maybe you could say the same for a Peter Wright. But what this does do is, again, in these deeper draft leagues where all of a sudden you might not get the access to the quality of ruck, you find yourself with bad options, at least you've got two that might get some AFL games. So I understand what they've done with that manoeuvring. You really want to know the forwards, let's be honest, because there is no defensive ads. The real gains on the keeper platform is always the DPP or the TPP that kind of gives us something that is verging on fieldable, let alone premium end territory, now all of a sudden becoming, high octane option for us. Jason Horne-Francis lost forward status for like a day, and now it's back. He's a mid forward. Now, this isn't just based on a centre square attendance ratio, but it's about that scoring rate of scoreboard impact and the amount of possessions and marks that he's taking inside forward 50. Again, it helps us understand a little bit more of maybe where keeper values certain things that champion data do or don't. But I like this addition here, not only because it gives us another top line scoring option in the forward line that certainly for keeper and dynasty league, well, all of a sudden you thought you were losing your best forward or probable best forward. Now you're not. But it does for single season drafts just open up some new different strategies. I can tell they've not done it for the sake of it, but I can understand that this is clearly something that as we learn more as a community, the differentiation between how this draft platform might have worked to the ones you've previously used, that they're like, no, how a player and the frequency and the ratio of what they're doing inside forward 50, not just their center square attendance at or where they're positioned at a centre bounce, may or may not have been there. So I like this manoeuvring. Genuinely, it's a life-saving move for keeper and dynasty coaches. That is for sure. In a similar vein, Luke Jackson thought he was just going to be a pure ruck. No. Ruck forward. Because let's be honest here. The number of times he attended a centre square when he wasn't a ruck, when there was those handful of moments where he did as a mid while Hayden Young was out injured and they wanted that bigger, taller, stronger body in there to go alongside a Brayshaw and Sarong. It's a very tiny number. And the pure reality is, what position is Luke Jackson? Like, let's not overthink this and overyoke this. He's a ruck forward. He plays ruck when Sean Darcy's either injured or on the bench, and then the rest of the time he plays forward. It's the definition of what he is. So I think it makes a total sense. And again, he's got that high scoring rate of where he's taking his marks, where he's getting his possessions, how he's impacting the scoreboard. It's all when he's in and around that forward 50 element. So I really don't mind it. Some would be like, he should be a mid ruck. He shouldn't. If he's getting a secondary position, it was always going to be ruck forward. It was always going to be touch and go for me in the champion data listing. So not disappointed that he was a pure ruck in that by any means, but look, ruck forward to me, I'm happy with it. And again, it's handy enough for his owners. This is probably the big, new, fresh gain. And when I mean fresh, I mean in contrast to the position they held in 2025. Isaac Heaney. Now, you might be looking at his centre square attendance going, hang on, MJ, I know you don't pick the positions, because I don't. What a keeper doing? He had like a 70+% ratio of centre square attendance now. That's not nuts. That's not mid forward. And if you're just using CBA data as the primary definer, then I'd agree with you. But then it comes back to, again, we're talking about a greater understanding of not just the champion data threshold that, again, they've been doing it for a decade plus of informing us as a community. It's that 35% in a secondary position. But with keeper, because it's only the second year the platform's around, as a community on this draft platform, we're just growing in understanding. They're not moving the goalposts. We're just growing in our understanding of what and how they choose to value these double position options or triple position options that they're giving us. Is, again, it comes back to the point I mentioned around Jason Horne-Francis. It's the percentage of scoreboard impacts, where they're taking their marks and where they're getting their possessions. And yes, he's a midfielder without question. But what he's then doing a lot based on what their midfield mix is he was often moving forward last year, not just at centre square opportunities, but after the ball gets thrown up, he'd go forward and create that dynamic matchup that would be really favourable for him. And so on that premise, I think that sits pretty comfortable for me. This becomes huge for owners. It shakes up your draft rankings for sure in single season and in keeper and dynasty leagues. It really puts him in an interesting shape. So I really, really like this move. Two last players that have picked up forward status. One is currently mid. One is currently a defender. Let's talk about the defender one, and then we'll hit the last one that sits through there. Mitch McGovern, defender forward. He's got it in his sights. Swung forward a lot last year. Okay, a lot's probably a stretch, but no Curnow, no Silvani. They did a lot of moving around to those tall options, and McGovern at times became the guy that they threw through there. Look, politely, he kind of got a contract at the very end of the year once it was obvious who was and wasn't going to be on their list. I don't think he's in their best 23. You're probably not picking him anyway, but I think it's an understandable gain. So we'll happily give that one to him. And then the last one, it was unique to keeper last year, and I loved why they did it. And I think they've kept that logic and thread running through for a new year. And again, it helps us to learn, okay, this is what they're looking at. These are the data points that this platform is valuing. It's not wrong. It's not moving the goals. It's just, okay, we understand it now more. The player I'm alluding to is Ollie Dempsey. Plays across the wing, no question. But let's go back, because he's now mid-forward. Let's go back and remind ourselves, 12 months ago, we're going, oh yeah, that was right for Ollie. And then through the year, whenever, either if you're a Geelong supporter or you played against Geelongs, how many times would he take a mark inside forward 50? And no, not just work rate, taking a cheeky Josh Jenkins style mark in the goal square for a sneaky plus 12. I'm not talking about that, but just his ability, not in the same vein, but in a comparable territory, where he would create separation, get that right matchup. And we would see guys like Manna push into that midfield mix, maybe not at centre square, but push into the midfield mix so they could create a really hard matchup where the wingman was now lining up in defence on Dempsey, when he would just sit through there, and then they create that rotational swip off. So now Manna's got the wingman, and he would be able to create some challenging moments. He'd get the defender. It's brilliant coaching from Chris Scott, but I love this move. Again, it keeps Ollie Dempsey relevant in draft. They're not doing it, I believe, just to add relevance, but they're doing it because it's like, well, this makes sense. He's getting, again, lots of scoring rate inside forward 50. And not only scoring rate, I mean where he's getting his fantasy and his keeper points heavily inside forward 50. Lots of marks inside forward 50. So I totally get these positions. So that is what they've done. 13 new positional gains, and really the big ones are Horne-Francis and Jackson holding their forward status and Isaac Heaney gaining it. It is awesome what they've been able to do. Now, as always, I've mentioned at the top of the episode, on the keeper platform, it is having unrivaled customizations. You can choose to go with the champion data listed ones that they do, not only for the start of year, but their year-round DPPs. We can do what I know all the leagues I'm involved. We just are all in on the Keeper platform, and we go with their Keeper platforms. It all sits inside that spot. Your commissioner can choose the level of customizations, not just for positional status, but a bunch of different unrivaled customizations. It is what has set aside Keeper from all other draft platforms. Is they just are so brilliant at supporting, listening, and applying the feedback from the fantasy football community that is in the draft platforms. So that's it. Those are your 13 new players. As I mentioned, at the ends of rounds 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and 18, they'll be having additional positional changes during the year. But what do you think about them? I'd love to know your thoughts. If you're watching this on YouTube, why don't you comment below and let me know. Are you happy with these positional changes? Is there someone you'd love to see? Is there a question you've got for the guys at Keep It? We'd love for you to know. Put all those questions in the comments section below. And if you're listening to this as an audio podcast, you can also check this out, as an article, if you want to go back and read it all, at coachespanel.tv. It's all sitting through there. The positions are out, not only for your classic nuffies, but now for those of us that love the draft. They are locked in for the 2026 season. Fantasy footy is coming back bigger and better than ever in 2026. And here at the Coaches Panel, we've got you covered for everything you need to know about your Keeper platform. And if you love to play those classic formats of the games, here at the Coaches Panel, we got you covered too. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back real soon with another episode here from the Coaches Panel.